Hi, it's going to be May 4th when you see this presentation. And I would like to use this opportunity to talk a bit about the framework, if you could say so, for future sustainable development, which in my world, in my eyes, is very much connected to the 17 development goals as a communication platform and a way to actually make people agree and talk about the same things when we talk about what sustainability should be about. So that's the topic for today. If we don't care about overuse of resources, we will run out of raw materials to build from. That's an environmental bottom line. And the environmental bottom line can be seen together with the two other bottom lines, the social bottom line and the economic bottom line. All three are interdependent. And in this case, when we talk about the environmental bottom line, then we are talking about what we actually have to build from and how we're going to use that in the most sustainable way in order to cope with the future rising population all the world over. In Denmark, we have an issue about gravel, about what we use to produce concrete, for instance. Many buildings in Denmark are built with concrete slabs, and concrete is a major material to build from, besides bricks, as we have talked about a bit, and other kind of construction materials. If we don't care about how we actually avoid overusing sand and gravel and other aspects of concrete, then we will have a trouble. We will have a problem. So we may either have to take care about how we use the materials, or we may have to find other materials to build from. In Denmark, there is a lot of discussion going on right now about wood as a building material, tree as a building material. You might suppose that we have many buildings in wood in Denmark, since it is one of the oldest building materials that you can think of. But actually we have had a long period of time where we have almost no buildings of wood. And therefore we have a situation today where the construction industry kind of feel insecure about how to build with wood, because of the fact that we live in a very humid climate. And in that humid climate, it can be quite risky to build from wood, because wood deteriorates in very wet and soft and humid climates. But we have to kind of improve on building with wood or steel, for instance, because otherwise we will run into a situation where we do not have the raw materials for concrete or even brick in the future. So that's one way of thinking to care about the overuse of resources, so that we can meet the environmental bottom line. If we don't secure an okay welfare for people, social problems will grow out of our hands and undermine societal economies, societal bottom line. Also in Europe, we experience many migrants. As you experience migrants coming in from Mexico and South America, we experience them coming in from the Middle East and from Africa. And they come for a reason. They come for a reason that is connected to the fact that their living conditions are not good enough where they come from, depending upon different issues, such as it can be war or other conflicts, or it can be hunger, or it can be climate change. And therefore climate change can have a negative impact upon migrating. And that's also another reason for putting emphasis and putting work into controlling climate change. Not that we don't want to say welcome to migrants, but migrants may every so often actually want to be where they come from. And the thing that drives them in other directions is that the premises are not very good. So if we can work all together on establishing a world where the premises are okay for people from different nations where they come from, then we may also reduce migrating and reduce conflicts. The more people we are, the more people who have bad circumstances and bad conditions, the more conflicts we can reach. And that is an unsecure and unsure world to be in for everybody. So we may also, from a societal point of view, want to cope with climate change, for instance. An issue that is connected to this, and that is actually quite obvious for the moment, that is that you usually tend to think that working with sustainability is something that costs money. The thing is that it's too expensive not to. But there has been a hesitance. There has been like a rejection of taking the responsibility upon our shoulders because the argument has been that it's too expensive and it's too elite, it's too exclusive in a sense. I think we all may look around us and see that the COVID-19 crisis that we are facing right now tells us that we can actually pay what it costs to overcome a crisis. We may have to pay a big price, but it will also be a really big price to pay if we don't take care of the climate. So there is a very good reason for actually dealing with climate in future after COVID-19. On Friday last week, there was a big proposal raised from the Danish government about putting 30 billion kroner into building and renovating new housing in Denmark. That is a way to actually, you could say, stay alive, and it is a way to push energy into the building sector and to have some kind of a new beginning in order to overcome the crisis connected to COVID-19. So as soon as Denmark begins to open again, new plans will also be made to renovate buildings and to renovate housing all over Denmark. And why wouldn't you want to do that in a green way? Energy refurbishment, other kinds of sustainable refurbishment are obvious features to work with in that situation. And from that point of view, we actually take care of the environment at the same time as we create an environment that has the best promises for people. And when the environment has the best promises for people, we also have the best premises for creating business and creating a profitable business. And that is about the financial bottom line. So in that sense, you can see that the environmental bottom line and the societal bottom line and the business bottom line, the financial bottom line, is closely connected. You cannot do anything with one thing without having an eye on another thing of these three aspects. So these focus as three bottom lines. That is of interest for several parties. And business is in no way, business is in no way something that hinders, and ideally it actually accelerates the transition to a prosperous future for us all. The architecture profession has realized this, and architects are ever so often in the front runners for new, you could say, moves. And in this case, architects also from a self-understanding point of view has a special interest in actually using the mindset, the approach from sustainable architecture as a, you could say, a platform for creating future architecture. In 2023, there will be a big conference in Copenhagen, which is called the UIA conference, the Union of International Architects World Congress. This Congress is kept every third year, and it moves around all over the world. This year, it should have been in Brazil, but because of the COVID-19, it's pushed till 2021. We don't know yet whether this Congress in 2023 will be pushed to 2024. But until now, we work from the premises that it will be kept in Copenhagen in 2023. The theme of the Congress is Sustainable Futures. And the idea is about discussing architect contribution to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This conference will gather more than 10,000 architects. So there will be quite a forum for this discussion. And in Denmark, we have designed and made this architecture guide for the UN's 17 Sustainable Goals. It is like this one. It's a little booklet, and it contains different architecture and different ways of thinking of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I would like to cover some of them in this lecture. The guide has collected, or the group behind the guide are collecting examples from all over the world to actually materialize how Sustainable Development Goals can be worked with in a future architectural approach. And you can see there are also examples from the United States. There is, among others, one from Detroit, and there is one from San Francisco. And then there are also a few in South America. This is an ongoing process, and I actually gave you a link to a site which is developed from the Architecture Association in Denmark. And if you are aware of or know any projects that could be interesting to put in a future version of this pamphlet, then please check that site and follow the links, and you will get access to a group of people behind the site that are collecting projects for the next version of it. And we would want to have much more projects from Asia and United States and South America and Oceania in the guide, in the future guide. The guide is built up on these 17 statements that each of them describe one of the 17 development goals. And the UIA Commission thinks of architects as somebody who has a unique position in regards to global representation and are well positioned to create a bridge between the targets of the UN Sustainable Development Agenda and the practical activities of architects all around the world. Let me try to go into some of these statements here and inspire you to think about how architects and architecture and planning can be examples of ways to go to fulfill the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The Dhaka Declaration, as it's called, comes up with different statements, as already mentioned. And in this, the first of the 17 goals, no poverty, you say that architects can seek to build in ways that help to eradicate poverty by designing low-cost housing and institutions that are safe, healthy, and resilient. In short terms, it's about creating social housing, for instance, housing that is affordable for every man. And it's also about creating good institutions schools, daycare centers, and so forth that are safe and healthy for people, children, and people working there, so that we can, in a sense, support the poorer part of the world and allow them also to be part of a sustainable development. The poorer you are, the less surplus you may have. So in every sense where we can support creating surplus for the poorer people, we are also lifting the overall atmosphere and the overall, you could say, character of the world. Zero hunger is the goal number 2. And architects can, through planning, landscape, and building design, protect ecosystems and preserve areas for food production. We are around 6 billion people in the world, on the globe today, and it is predicted that we will be up to 9 million people, billion people in 2050, I think it is. It takes something to feed all these people. At the same time as we are building bigger and bigger cities to house all these people, we are also diminishing the agricultural land to feed all these people. So we will have to think out of the box in order to create new possibilities for food production. That can be in urban farming, for instance. We have actually already talked about urban farming when we visited Østerbro in outer Østerbro. And there are many other ways you can think about and improve and innovate about how to grow more vegetables to feed the growing number of people all over the globe. Good health and well-being is also an issue. And architects can design and plan so that exposure to communicable diseases and pollutions is reduced. You can use daylight, good acoustics, and air quality and provide that, and all kinds of healthy levels of activity will be promoted. In this sustainability development goal, we actually address situations such as the COVID-19 directly. So whenever you would want to create a way to think about urban planning and so forth in the future, you would bear in mind that we also have to care about how to deal with pandemics, because it will probably not be the last time that this happens. So we will have to deal with, in the way we plan cities in the future, how to actually address the fact that pandemics can be a more and more common part of our future in the world. This means, for instance, taking care of designing spaces where you can have plenty of room, and designing bike lanes for activities, and designing spaces in buildings to allow for people to be together but not together at the same time. You may want to design more business meetings and so forth, like online meetings, but you may also want to design spaces for those meetings that cannot take place online. You may have to design your homes in a way so that you can work from home to a much higher degree than what you can today, and still be in contact with everybody around. You may have to design public transportation in a way so that you can cope with situations where you have to be sure that there is enough space between people to avoid contagiousness. So Corona and COVID-19 is issues that is playing a role in number 3, and also good indoor climate to avoid bad health is an issue in this sustainable development goal. Number 4 is about quality education, and architects can design educational facilities that are affordable and inclusive. So this is very much about how we teach for learning, how we optimize the premises for learning. at all levels, both in childcare, in schools, in high schools, in educational facilities, and for you could say after learning for professionals and so forth. How do you do that, and how do you create the optimum premises for people to get cleverer and also actually to live a more sustainable? How do you teach a living a more sustainable way? Architects can help to shape building settlements and urban areas to include all persons, regardless of gender, and can work to promote gender equality in the design and construction industry. There are two aspects here. One of them is to design not only for one gender, but for two genders. Genders may have different needs. You could say that that might not necessarily have to do with gender approach, the gender issue, but bearing in mind, for instance, that urban spaces should not only be designed for boys on skateboards or rollerblades. It should also be designed for girls who want more quiet, intimate spaces for chatting and talking and so forth. Or boys who feel like that, or girls who want to go on rollerblades. So it is about grasping and containing both the masculine and the feminine way of thinking and create equal spaces so that everybody is allowed to be in that space without feeling intimidated or feeling pushed in directions that are others than the ones the ones they want to be in. Clean water and sanitation. Architects can design and plan to avoid water waste or excessive runoff and to reduce the encroachment of salt water on freshwater aquifers and bodies. Only 1% of all our water resources on the globe is fresh water. We have to take very much care about fresh water because we still don't have proper enough technologies to clean salt water from salt. So therefore it is very much a matter of dealing with the fresh water that we have and treating it in a way so that it don't diminishes, but we may actually even be able to produce or to get more fresh water. For instance, during capturing rain, rinsing wastewater, and stuff like that. So that is an issue in the number 6. Number seven is about affordable and clean energy. Architects can design and plan buildings and settlements to reduce energy use, produce renewable energy where feasible, adapt to geographic, climatic, and cultural conditions. We are running out of fossil fuels, so we may have to do something in order to promote renewable energy, like sun energy, wind energy, wave energy, and other kinds of energy that needs attention so that we still can feed and allow the proper environment for people in the future when we grow more and more people. Decent work and economic growth. Architects can specify building materials produced in safe and clean environments and work to ensure secure conditions on building sites and in demolition processes. This has very much to do with thinking in life cycle costing rather than only initial costs. If you plan and build projects and only think of initial costs, you may have to want to do this in as cheap a way as possible, because otherwise it will simply be too expensive. But the thing about this parameter, this criterion, this goal is that you may have to kind of switch the mindset around and think more about life cycle cost. Think about that if you spend good money, enough money in the beginning, you might end up in a situation where you actually have a product or a building or a plan or a city which is easier to maintain, easier to run, because it has had enough attention in the beginning. And when it's easier to easier to maintain, that is also cheaper. And that again will give a life cycle cost economy, which is probably more advantageous than if you had just thought about the initial costs and only thought about that it would be too expensive to build sustainably in the very beginning. Try to twist that mind and think about how you can actually create buildings that are lasting, that are resilient, and that offers good conditions for running and maintenance in the future. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Architects can seek to use services, products, and systems that pollute less, use less energy, produce less waste, and provide solutions that are safe, healthy, and less costly. All these aspects that we have talked about so far craves innovation. It is really important that you become creative in this, not least you guys, because you are the ones who will create the future cities. And you are the ones who have to think out of the box to actually solve the situation about an increasing amount of people that wants to live in cities that grows and grows and grow and grow. So innovation is needed, for instance, to develop new ways of food production, to develop new ways of thinking life costs, life cost, totally cost conditions rather than initial costs, to think about how to develop the future renewable energy, and to think about how to improve the amount of water in the world. All these aspects craves you guys to be innovative. So that is one of the goals also, that is to support the fact that innovation is needed. Reduce inequalities. Architects can promote design and planning approaches that are socially responsible, inclusive, and accommodate the needs of all people. There are reports and analysis made that tells us that it is much more appropriate and convenient and good for the world if we can kind of erase inequality far more than it is right now. Actually, we see a situation right now where equality is not the case. We have a bigger gap between the rich and the poor. We have a bigger gap between the south and the north. And we have bigger gaps in very many cases. And that creates tension, conflict, and even war. And when we are becoming more people, we will want to avoid all these conflicts. So therefore, there are OECD reports that tells us that it will be much more expensive for the world to keep on sticking to having too much inequality. If we can reduce equality, it would be much better for more people. So that is one of the issues connected to number 10, reduced inequalities. Sustainable cities and communities. Architects can promote measures that help to make cities more inclusive, safer, and more resilient, and adapt to anticipated climate change with special attention to vulnerable segments of society. We have earlier talked about C40, and we have earlier talked about what C40, this coalition between the major cities of the world. One of the aspects, one of the characteristics, and one of the very significant and interesting things about C40 is that if you look at the C40 members, these 98 cities that are members of C40, they represent more than 25% of the entire national of the entire economy on the entire globe. And that's why sustainable cities and communities have a special place in the Sustainable Development Goals. It is to point out that it's necessary to be very much aware of about how to design sustainable cities, as 75% of people on the globe will in 2050 live in cities. That's why there needs to be so much attention upon it, and that's why Copenhagen plays a role in regards to inspiring people and cities all over the world to a more sustainable way of developing cities. Number 12 is about responsible consumption and production. Architects can seek to design for durability and for sustainable life cycles in building components and materials, favoring recycled materials wherever possible. Again, like when we talked about food production, the world is running short. The world needs innovation, like pointed at in Sustainable Development Goal 9. The world needs innovation and development in regards to how to consume in a responsible way and how to produce in a responsible way. So number 12, when we talk about the building industry, is about how to optimize the use of materials and how to develop new materials that can go into place where we may be running short of more traditional materials. Number 13 is about climate action. Architects can take action to reduce or eliminate the climate changing emissions associated with the construction and operation of buildings they design, and make their designs adaptable to anticipated changes in climate. There are two issues in this. The first issue is about reducing the climate impact through all these aspects that we have been talking about so far already. The second aspect is about making buildings and urban spaces and cities that are resilient towards the climate change that has already taken place. So those two aspects are connected to climate action. Life below water is about all the salt water in the sea. Architects can exercise special care for buildings and settlements in coastal regions and in fragile aquatic ecosystems, taking all possible steps to reduce harmful effects of waste and pollution on water. So there are two aspects also here. One aspect is about being careful when you build in the coastlines. How do you treat the coasts, and how do you actually build cities that are also resilient to storms and to raising seawater, raising sea levels? That's one aspect. The other one is that I think it's more than half of the world, maybe even more than 2/3 of the world population that are depending upon the food production in ocean. So if we continue polluting the oceans, we reduce our own food supply, and we may not want to do that the more people we get. So whatever we can do to reduce polluting, both like liquids, poisonous liquids, and other issues that pollute the oceans as such, but also in regards to plastics, avoid plastics. The more we can do to do that, the more we will actually work in favor of Sustainable Development Goal number 14. Life on land. Architects can help promote urban development that minimize sprawl and so reduces threats to biodiverse habitats. They can design buildings and settlements that integrate landscapes, provides habitats, and connects with larger ecosystems. This is also an interesting aspect for because this has very much to do with landscape planning and urban planning, and it has very much to do with still creating space for food production and recreation in the countryside, and at the same time as you also need to take care that cities have green aspects also, again, both for food production and for recreation. So life on land is about that. Life on land is about also securing that you can still have food production and secure the diversity to to have a diverse animal life, and also in that sense a diverse people life. Peace, justice, and strong institutions is number 16. Architects can advocate for policies, do their projects that reduce opportunities for corruption, bribery, or unjust labor practices. Nobody in the name of sustainable development needs corruption, bribery, or unjust labor practices. Corruption, bribery, and unjust labor practices support poverty. It may even support hunger. It may even support bad working environments. It may even support too much harvesting of fragile and scarce resources. So to promote a more peaceful world with justice and strong institutions is also part of the Sustainable Development Goals. And last but not least, all these issues that we have been talking about, they require us to be more aware of how to partner up and do all the necessary development in a transparent way that allows everybody to be involved and everybody to have some kind of ownership to the development. So partnership for the goals, where architects can join with those who work to advance the goals, that is extremely important for this development. Working together, we can achieve a prosperous and sustainable future. So those were the 17 statements connected to the 17 development goals that architects and urban planners work with. Value regards to this we can see that in health and urban life, in productivity and learning, climate, social cohesion, economics, buildability, and use of resources. Because what is really needed here is that we know that all this create value, because otherwise we'll not be willing to pay what it costs to push in this direction. I'm gonna move this again now because it's messing around. Here are examples from Denmark on all 17 goals. This is social housing. This is an environmental station with urban gardening. Number 2, zero hunger. Number 3 is the condition that we have been talking about a few times to promote activity, physical activity. Number 4 is a school in the western part of Denmark that is called Frederiksberg School, which has been built by reused bricks, and you have a lot of emphasis on creating a good indoor climate so that the students in the school have the best opportunities for learning in this case. Number 5 is a playground where you have put special emphasis upon how girls play, so that girls also feel welcome in this playground. Number 6 is a climate adaptation project, which is actually in a combination with a health, with a physical activity project. So you are hitting more than one goal in this project here, and you could say that the primary goal is about capturing and harvesting water from flooding and rains and cleanse it, and so that it can either go into the groundwater and support the groundwater production, or it can be used to different activities that would otherwise require groundwater. This is a school. This is an institution with a special focus on solar energy. It has its entire roof covered by solar panels. Excuse me, photovoltaics. This is about decent work conditions. It is like a transportable, movable tent that can be used to building processes and accommodate a good working environment for building processes. This is innovation and infrastructure. This is one of the bridges in Copenhagen where you can bike all over Copenhagen, which actually hits both the physical activity number 4, and it also hits the urban, the sustainable urban surroundings in number 11, and it actually also connects the city in a quick way, and it supports the green mobility rather than the heavy traffic mobility. This building is a building for handicapped people. It is the main domicile where for all the organizations that deals with different kind of handicap. It could be blinds, people who cannot hear, people who sit in wheelchairs, people who have other kinds of disabilities. They have a domicile which is covering all their organizations, and everything in this building has been designed so that it accommodates and support people with different kinds of handicaps. And that is also a way to actually reduce inequality if you can design so that all kinds of handicaps can be present in different settings. We have already talked a little bit about sustainable urban planning, sustainable communities. In this case, we have a picture from one of the climate adaptation projects that we also visited in our class. In this sense, about responsible consumption and production, it is a picture from a housing project in Copenhagen that is built totally from recyclable materials. This project down here, number 13, climate adaptation, is a project where there has been a special emphasis upon how to actually combine recreation and climate adaptation. This number 14 is a really, really beautiful visitor center in the western coast of Denmark, where we have an area with a very significant low tide and high tide that has quite an impact upon the animal life in that area. And a very good architect called Dorte Mandrup designed this beautiful visitor center to actually celebrate and inform about this very, very unique habitat that this area is. And this is a project from the northern part of Zealand. It is Novo Nordisk. You may know about them. They are producing medicine for diabetes patients, and they have a number of domiciles in Denmark since they are originally Danish, and one of them have spent a lot of money in creating a habitat that celebrates insects, birds, different kind of Danish vegetation, and in that sense they actually want to create some kind of positive influence on the surroundings also by providing habitats for all kinds of animals that will also play a role in the surroundings and by the neighbors. This is a common house in a very fragile neighborhood where you have several conflicts between citizens and dwellers, and because people are not having too much money in this area, and that creates conflict. So therefore a big effort has been put into creating good common facilities so that you can support people in getting together and getting good relationships to each other. And this is a library that is designed for this place. And finally, last but not least, in this case, we have a special pavement systems that allow water to be sipping down through the pavement, collected, and can be used for watering plants other places. Why I point this out is that it is a very, you could say, impressive example of different professions that has gone together and designed this by the use of everybody's special knowledge, and letting everything come into play to design an optimum solution in a partnership for avoiding hard surfaces in the city for more reasons, both for collecting water, but also to avoid that heat island effect that we have been talking about earlier. I'm just going to take out two. Architects can promote measures that help make cities more inclusive, safer, and more resilient and adaptive to anticipate climate change, with special attention to vulnerable segments of the society. We have a picture from a situation last summer. We have been there on some of our walks, and you can see that in a situation in the summer, lots of people feel an ownership and feel nice and feel comfortable and enjoy being together. So that is a way you can actually measure the sustainability of a city, if you can, for instance, create spaces where people want to be. And the interesting thing about the Sustainable Development number 11 is that there are, excuse me, there is a number of sub criteria under number 11 that each of them have something to do with any of the other Sustainable Development goals. So you could say that in many senses that architects and planners have a lot of tools to work with Sustainable Development goal if they understand how to use the Sustainable Development goals as a way to communicate. It could be specifications, it could be demands, it could be strategies and whatever to change in a positive direction. We have already also talked about the DG&B as a way to work with that. And in this case, I'm going to point that DG&B also meets the three criteria of social, environmental, and financial quality, and focus each of them on different aspects of it. And this needs to be done in a high level of technical quality. And we need to do that in a process where we work good together. So there are many of these issues that you actually have to work with when you want to design a building that is DG&B certifiable, that also automatically works with the 17 development goals. And if you think about that when you plan, you can actually also take another aspect of DG&B, which is called DG&B Diamond. And that is a tool that you can use for architectural quality and value when you design and when you design the scale, the place, when you lay it out and when you detail it, then you can hit at different levels in regards to how the building functions or the place functions or the city functions. You can do something to underline and support the durability, and you can indeed do something to underline and support the beauty. So those aspects are significant and specific instruments that can actually support and be supported by the 17 development goals as tools to work with in regards to sustainable development. Responsible consumption and production, where architects can see to design for durability and for sustainable life cycles in building components and materials, favoring recycled materials wherever possible. I'm going to come back to this project later on, but the interesting part of it is that this is built totally by material coming from other building sites. And it's at the same time a very attractive housing project in Ørsted, where you live in a sense, in a way where you both can work from home and be home at home. So in that sense, it's not only innovative in regards to how to work or incorporate recycled building material, it's also challenging the way we live and point into the future about how we need to be able to combine private life and working life in the future. Health is, we already touched upon that, so this is only a few examples to tell you about how you can work with the 17 development goals. In this case, it is a hospital. It is Henning Larsen Architects who have put a lot of emphasis on designing Herlev Hospital, so that it means, so that the landscape and the spaces as such support the healing for people being hospitalized. There is a special design strategy that is called healing architecture that underlines this. And if you are specifically interested in healing and how buildings and surroundings can help to heal, you may want to dive down into healing architecture. It has to do with lights, art, sound, air, and movement. How can you improve that? And how can you make it as comfortable and nice and supportive as ever possible when you design hospitals? Urban life, we have already also talked about the fact that the Copenhagen harbor is clean, and it is so clean that you can swim in it. And in this case, that strategy has been used to support and make areas more inviting to get people to meet each other and reduce conflict. So the focus upon recreational oases and new residential areas is part of that strategy. This is Frederiksberg School. I already mentioned that, and it is designed in Aarhus. Not only is it designed for improving learning for children and productivity, it's also used reused bricks from the area that is used as materials in this building. And there are a certain number of other features that also supports sustainable building. So productivity and learning could be about schools and institutions and universities and so forth, but it could also be about how you design offices so that you support evidence exchangement and meeting facilities and productiveness in terms of good indoor climate that could have a possible impact upon and upon how you exchange knowledge with your colleagues. So it's about school system development, school architecture, and sustainable pedagogy. Climate adaptation and optimization. We're gonna visit this place during the course, and architecture can help in fight against climate change by, for instance, improving on rainwater handling and create learning communities, and let that also be social gathering spaces. Social cohesion is also an aspect that is touched in the 17 development goals. In this case, it's an island where you have built a energy academy, and this island, Samsø is called, is self-sufficient in all kinds of energy production, and they are self-sufficient to a degree where they actually are telling the good story as a example, and therefore they have built this energy academy, which is both a teaching facility, but it's also a visitor center where you can go and learn about energy and renewable energy as such. That has meant not only a with ownership to the facts between the citizens of the island, to the fact that it is self-sufficient, but it's also workspaces and workplaces, and in that sense also plays an important role for the society as such on Samsø, and contributes to social cohesion. Now it's about identity, belonging, ownership, engagement, and durability. Economics, build capital, and circular economy is about how we deal with natural capital, human capital, social capital, symbol capital, financial capital. The wealth of society is tied up in bricks and mortar. Others say that the way we build mirrors our geology. Our culture mirrors our geology. And build capital and social and circular economy is about these 5 bullets here. So economics is totally closely connected to the quality of what we build. Buildability. This is another this is another visitor center and hotel and conference center, and it's in another island. It is in Bornholm, and what they have been urging for here is to demonstrate and communicate buildability in terms of future sustainable solutions at all levels, both in building techniques, but also in how you develop technologies and how you eat and what you eat and how you grow your own food. There is like 25 different technologies, strategies, tools that you can see upon how to work with the future, carried out one-to-one in Green Solution House in Bornholm. And not one of the important aspects is about also how to build the future's buildings. Design for disassembly, circular construction, efficient building processes, flexibility for transformation, and good working environment are issues that you can see examples of in Green Solution House. This is actually again the upcycle studios that we will come back to in Ørestad. The term connected to this is that reuse is good for the bottom line. So putting an emphasis upon how to actually work with reclaiming, reusing, recycling, resource efficiency, transformation, and sharing economy is issues that play roles in regards to SDG number 12 about responsible production and consumption. And these 6 bullets here are headlines that can be connected to that. That was it for today, and thank you for joining me, and I'm gonna take you to Amager Strand as a little bonus, but we come back to that in a short while.